Welcome to the lesson. In this lesson, your question is, what factors contributed to the development of early Greece? We're going to be taking a look at the development of the Greek government over time, as well as ancient Greek culture. So we're going to get started by taking a look at our goals and words to know for this lesson. So let's get started. So let's take a look at our lesson goals. Overall, we're going to learn about the foundations of ancient Greece. Within that, we're going to explain why the geography of Greece was important to its growth. Then, we're going to describe the organization of Greek city-states. And then finally, we're going to identify contributions to early Greek culture. Let's take a look now at our words to know for this lesson. Our words are precede, epic, fable, mythology, oligarchy, and polis. So now we're going to get started with the lesson. In this lesson, we're going to be studying how civilization arose in ancient Greek. That's why our lesson question is, what factors contributed to the development of early Greece? We're going to talk about the growth of civilization, including the growth of the earliest city-states. You can see here an image of the Mycenaean civilization, one of the earliest ancient Greek civilizations. We're also going to talk about the development of culture. You can see one of the most famous heroes of ancient Greek literature, Odysseus, here. So we're going to get started with our lesson now. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about classical civilizations. Classical civilizations were more advanced than the river valley civilizations that preceded them or came before them. They had complex systems of government. They had agricultural economies based on the production and distribution of agricultural crops. They were working on expanding trade, not only on land but also on sea. They were developing enduring cultures. In particular, the civilizations of both Greece and Rome are considered classical civilizations from this time period, and their cultural influence extends all the way to this day. They were very influential in European culture and therefore also on U.S. culture. So in this lesson, you're working to answer the question, what factors contributed to the development of early Greece? You already know that Greece is considered to be a classical civilization that had many more characteristics that were far more advanced than the other river valley civilizations that came before it. We're going to now get into the growth of Greek civilization, in particular explore the topic of its geography and how it was very strategic in enabling its growth. So let's talk about the geography of Greece. Greece is located in southeastern Europe, and it's actually only about the size of the state of Alabama, but it has a huge variety of land that proved to be very advantageous in its development. As Greece was developing its civilization, its geography really contributed to its rapid growth. You can see a couple of different geographic features on the map here. In particular, you can see the mountain region over here, which was very good at protecting from invasion. You can see that Greece also had quite a lot of rocky terrain, which was very good for herding animals, had a lot of good land that was also further down towards the coast that was very good at growing things like wheat, like dates and olives, crops that could be sold for very serious profits. And you can also see how much ocean there is all around Greece here. There are a lot of different coasts that they had access to, which made it a lot easier to trade things and also spread ideas to move from one place to another, including this particular peninsula here, the Peloponnese. And it's no wonder civilization developed so early in Greece with all of these different advantages. Let's take a look now at the first big civilization that began to grow in Greece, and that is the Minoans. This culture started to grow up right around the island of Crete at the bottom of Greece. You can see on the map right here, right around the year 6000 BCE. The culture was characterized by its large cities, like Sparta and Athens, big cities that eventually develop in Greece. Its access to harbors, which allowed it to become a seagoing power that traded over a wide area. In particular, they were trading in bronze objects that they were able to produce right on the island. They also developed a writing system called Linear A, which has not actually been translated to this day. Very complex writing system. They also had a polytheistic religion. That means a religion with many different gods, and particularly female gods for these folks. The Minoan civilization was quite prosperous, and it significantly influenced the next Greek civilization, which was the Mycenaeans, which we'll take a look at now. So you can see the Mycenaeans here, and in particular they grew up on the Peloponnese, right here, the peninsula. This culture built cities fortified with strong defenses and was ruled by warrior kings. There were a lot of different sort of separate settlements, and they were each ruled by different warring leaders rather than having any kind of centralized government. So there's a lot of internal conflict within the civilization. They did adopt elements of Minoan culture, in particular the writing system, and they fought a legendary war against the city of Troy, which you can see up on the map right here. So now we're going to give you a chance to check in with your knowledge about the two earliest great Greek civilizations. Not much is known about ancient Greek civilization after the fall of the Minoan and Mycenaean civilizations, but by about 850 BCE, we start to see the development of the Greek polis, or city-state. And you can see some of the Greek city-states on the map right here. In particular, two of the biggest ones were Athens and Sparta. Some of these states were ruled by a king, by one centralized authority. Others were oligarchies. It meant that they were ruled by a couple of different small, powerful leaders. And what we see here is that just like in the Mycenaean era, there's no centralized government. So each of these city-states kind of have their own government, their own independent affairs, and occasionally there's conflict between them. Let's take a look now at a timeline of the development of Greek civilization. You can see here there's quite a bit of overlap. We go from the Minoan civilization to a period of overlap with the Mycenaean civilization, and then finally, by about 900 BCE, the first city-states were beginning to emerge. The Minoans represented really the first true ancient Greek civilization. Let's take a look now at a further look at their accomplishments, because there were quite a few. By now you can see what a rich and complicated civilization the Greeks created, particularly how they developed their government. So you're one step closer now to answering your lesson question, which is, which factors contributed to the development of early Greece? Well, we've taken a look at the growth of civilization. Now we're going to take a deeper look at the development of Greek culture and how impactful it is all the way through to the present day. So let's get started. So let's talk now about the development of Greek culture. Well, there's no written record that exists from Greece after the fall of the Mycenaean civilization. At this point, we see information, instead of being written down, it's being passed down orally. Eventually, these oral histories were written down, and so we do have a bit of that, but from this time period, 1150 to 750 BCE, we don't see any written record. But we do like to study this time period because it actually is a time when much of the most rich and interesting Greek culture is developing, particularly literature and art and things like that. And it's really the foundations of classical Greek culture that are emerging at this time period. So we're going to take a look now at one of the most important writers from this time period, and that is a fellow named Homer, who we think lived right around 800 BCE. You can see an image of him right here. Very little is actually known about Homer. Despite his great fame in terms of writing very important works like the Iliad and the Odyssey, long tales that were known as epics, many people aren't even sure that Homer actually existed. There are theories that perhaps it was a name given to collections of oral histories that were compiled together rather than a single person. So there's very little known about him, but what we do know is that his works were very influential. He also told the history of the Trojan War, a very significant war during the development of Greek civilization, and his stories continued to influence Western education and culture all the way through to the present day. So for thousands of years, people have been reading Homer. In particular, the Iliad here is a very important work because it's actually the first piece of Greek literature to be written down. So Homer's very influential, and he's studied really to this very day for the insights that his writing gives us into what it was like to be Greek during this time period. Let's take a look now at an element of Homer's writing known as mythology. We know that Greek mythology was very important at this time period. And a myth is basically a traditional story. And the myths from Greece at this time period were a lot of creation stories, a lot of how do we know that the world came to be this way. And well-known Greeks and goddesses were written about quite a bit, including Zeus and Athena, you can see pictured here. The gods were personified like humans. They exhibited human characteristics and emotions such as jealousy and anger, love, things like that. And the mythology would really serve as the basis for Greek religion. So it's quite important at this time period. We're going to give you a chance now to take a look at a passage from the Iliad and get to know a little bit more about what the Greeks are writing at this time period. So another important storyteller from the Greek era was Aesop. And you may be familiar with the Fables of Aesop. A lot of his stories are still told today. We think he lived around 600 BCE, and he was a legendary storyteller. We're not even sure if Aesop actually wrote down any of his own stories. What we think happened is that a lot of those stories were told orally. People just told them to each other. And then finally, after he passed away, people started to write them down so they wouldn't forget them and so they could share them with others. But he is credited for authoring these different fables, or these sort of moralistic tales that always have a really sweet, conclusive ending. And you can see an image right here of one of those tales you may be familiar with, and that is the tortoise and the hare. If you've ever heard the saying, slow and steady wins the race, that comes from this. And so this comes all the way back to Aesop in 600 BCE, and you can see that his legacy, his influence continues right to this very day. We'll give you a chance to check in with your understanding of important Greek literature right now. Let's take a look at a timeline of early Greek civilizations, and you can see about 3,000 years of Greek civilization here. We start with the Minoan civilization, going all the way back to 3000 BCE. Then they overlap with the Mycenaean civilization, which they heavily influenced. And then we see by about 800 BCE, Homer is believed to have lived at that point, and right around the same time, 750 BCE, the first city-states are emerging. So you see right around the same time that Homer is writing the Iliad and the Odyssey, those great city-states are emerging, advancements in both sort of government and civilization, as well as in culture and literature at that same time. And you can see here, in addition to the timeline, by around 1069, Egypt's new kingdom emerged. And we like to place this here just to note that this is an actually even more advanced civilization going on at the same time as the Greek civilization, but much more advanced than the Greeks. And this was really the peak of that Egyptian new kingdom civilization. So you can see here 3,000 years of Greek civilization here. We'll give you a chance now to check in with your lesson question and get ready to answer it.